So I begin by saying to you, it's the mark of an educated mind to be able to entertain a thought without accepting it, which is obviously a quote by Aristotle. And I say that because obviously when we're entering this realm of knowledge, of information, we're going to have different opinions, different perspective on things, and I think that's healthy, that's good. But I also think it's important that we acknowledge and be at peace with other people's differences and perspectives. So I'm really looking forward to the journey we're going to go on this weekend together. We've got so many awesome presenters, the lineup's fantastic, and I thought I would just begin by giving you basically an energetic update of where we're at. So that's my name in case you forget it, and I understand that there are also people watching from all over the world with the live streaming. Do we have the technology? We have liftoff with the live stream? It's working, it's working. So welcome wherever you are on the live stream, and I really appreciate it's been a huge effort for you to log into a screen somewhere or anywhere you are in the world. So hope you enjoy the live streaming. So the energetic update we'll just start with. As you know, we've had a pretty turbulent time with a series of eclipses that have just taken place. Also, we've had a lot of retrograde planets all happening simultaneously, which has intensified this process, this turbulence of the shift. And there are many different processes we're all going through, and it's a challenging time, but in the challenges there's also the rewards. That's where the fruit is, and it's important to understand right at the beginning that in order to embrace these high frequencies we have to get out of our comfort zone, and there's no growth without challenge. If it doesn't challenge you, it doesn't change you. We all know that. So it's important to embrace these waves, embrace these different challenges that we're all undergoing individually and collectively. Also, in terms of the issue of disclosure, you obviously heard there's been a lot of hype about disclosure occurring, and I would sort of suggest by beginning to start with considering what is disclosure, what is the definition of disclosure, because it could really easily be argued that disclosure has already occurred. There's been soft disclosure continuously occurring, particularly in the last 18 months, and really, if you have the eyes to see it, the powers that be are basically preparing for some form of open contact or official disclosure, but it may never occur the way people perceive it to be in their imagination. That is some big announcement by a president at some point. So in this way, we can look at disclosure at a deeper level in terms of sovereignty. And by that I mean that many people are wanting confirmation of disclosure from an external source. And part of the paradigm shift is really becoming a sovereign being. And this is a phrase that you're going to hear more and more, particularly going into the next decade, and understanding and considering what is sovereignty. Because when we are wanting our external belief systems validated by someone else, that is a state of disempowerment. And really what we're looking for is a state of empowerment where we don't require any third party to validate our own understanding, our own integration into this cosmic sphere of consciousness which we're all connected to. So when I think about disclosure, I think about, I'm not waiting for the government to basically give me the green light that disclosure is occurring. I'm really considering it from my sovereign point of view, and as sure you are. So really that could be a confirmation for yourself that you're not really looking for someone to validate you. And that's a sense of deep empowerment. You know who you are, you know what you believe in, and you know what you stand for. So with this energetic update, we have been experiencing many different waves that have been coming, and the waves are very beneficial. So in spite of the turmoil that's been occurring in the last couple of months, there's also been very powerful activations. And the activations are really occurring from the energy center of the heart and upwards, which is in terms of the chakras, is how I consider things. So when we think about the event, well, I would say to you the event is ongoing and it's occurring repeatedly day in, day out. Because some of these activations will come spontaneously. There's not really any 3D linear time way of integrating into this perspective, because the waves of activation are coming through the subtle bodies and they're outside the perspective of linear time. So many of the, as you know, the false prophets of the New Age have been prophesizing again and again an event, and the one thing they have in common is they're continually wrong about the date. And the reason why they're wrong, yeah, it's not an inside joke. And they'll continue to be wrong. because they're trying to map consciousness in a linear time frame, and it doesn't work that way. So we can't say at what time in linear time perspective a critical mass will be reached. We don't know when that's going to occur, as we will experience it in linear time, but that's not the cause. It's just simply we're going to experience the effect. And the effect and the cause are important things to consider, because if we think about disclosure, the effect is if disclosure occurs, you can be sure that the cause means that there's the status quo has changed behind the scenes. And this means that basically there is something shifted, there's something changed that we're not aware of, and that's leading to some form of disclosure. So always think in terms of cause and effect. The causality of this event that is predicted is basically because we are in this transformation. It's not just the planet, it's the solar system. We're experiencing it here, but it's the end of an age. It's the end of an era. It's the end of an epoch. And we're at the threshold, the bridging point between this old paradigm and this new paradigm. And how this plays out in the next decade is largely up to us. And I would say to you that waiting for an event is extremely another form of disempowerment, because we're not actively taking responsibility for our own evolution. We're not actively engaging the process of growth, of inner transformation, and simply waiting for the universe to do the work for us. Now, that is actually happening to a degree at the same time, but it doesn't dissolve us of our responsibility, absolve us of our responsibility that we need to make our own efforts in order to integrate this energy coming in, because it's going to get more and more powerful. And even in the last couple of months, the energy has becoming flowing stronger into the subtle bodies. And this means the activations are getting more profound and they're getting stronger. But it's not happening in a linear time frame. So don't think an activation next week will therefore be stronger than an activation that was a month ago, because it's not working that way, at least as I perceive it. Now, one of the most important things that I would like to share with you is we need to be open to receive the subtle energies that are now bathing the planet. And by that, imagine if we're wearing a spacesuit. If our energetic body is blocked and we're not open, then we can't receive. So we're not creating the conditions, the fertility of our energetic body to receive that basic subtle energy, which is now of a very high vibration and it's coming spontaneously. So the thing to understand is that things like diet matter, because that helps purify our nadis, our energetic body. And not only diet, but lifestyle, but getting out in the sun, but exercising, but the mind-body connection, yoga, tai chi, qigong, meditation, and our overall integration into our daily life. Evolution is happening always here and now. It's not always happening somewhere else or a time in the future. And that means an empowered state is to take responsibility for that and to be open to receive. And openness is basically having a correlation with purity. And that doesn't mean to be, not to be holier than thou, but to have this pure emotional state, to have this pure state of consciousness. And we're all a work in progress. And that's part of the journey that we should celebrate. It's not a burden. But the thing to really be aware of is that the more pure we are, the more this energy will come into our being easier, and we'll be able to integrate it easier. And this is on all the different levels of our being, because the awakening is many different levels. But our role is therefore to be open to receive, because the potential post-2012 to receive this higher energetic vibration in the higher energy centers is far superior than pre-2012. So what's important to understand is if we are integrating, or our goal is to attain 100 units of love, then we've got to get through 5, 6, 7, 8 units of love. And that means that our awakening is a rite of passage. We have to earn it. We have to embody the frequencies. And for that reason, what I feel is going to happen the next decade is all this intellectual speculation about the awakening, about prophecy, about predictions, all these things will gradually become less significant, because what will become more significant is what we can actually embody and experience and understand. And we'll begin to understand more that the resonance, the frequency of truth, or embodying these frequencies, will be far more significant than intellectual speculation or being an armchair expert. And that's why we have to get out of our comfort zone and make our own efforts. So what I've noticed with these frequencies coming in is that the Schumann resonancy is having a causal factor with these downloads, with this information, with these subtle energies. Now, as I'm experiencing it, it's not completely black and white, but it's a strong influence because the Earth is shifting her vibration as well. And for this reason, I started myself to try to integrate more strongly with the Earth itself. And it doesn't come naturally to me, but I'm trying to, when I walk on the beach, I'm trying to feel the energy of the Earth. I'm trying to look for synchronicities in the sky, trying to perceive the Earth herself, the shift she's going through, because our consciousness is related to the Earth's consciousness, and she is transforming as well. So the more we can become grounded in this way and connected with the Earth, we can understand her journey. And this is having an effect with the Schumann resonance, which of course, as you know, has been spiking a lot. And even a few weeks ago, there was a very powerful spike, which I think that this will be another hot topic going into the next decade, what's happening with this, and there will be a new norm. Now, I know that the information with the Schumann resonance is not completely validated in the sense that a lot of the time it's returning to its normal frequency, but this electromagnetic field of the Earth is shifting, and this is something also that we can anchor a more left analytical, coherent side of our brain to understand the frequency shift. So when will the shift happen? No one knows that. Let's get to the point. No one actually knows that. I have been following prophecy since I was a teenager, like when I was really young. And most of the people who are making prophecies, think back to 2012, how many people made completely ridiculous prophecies that were completely wrong, whether they were on the doomsday side of things or they were all ascending to the fifth dimension and going to a spaceship. Or they were both wrong, right? Just turned out to be another day. But it wasn't. It had a significance to it. But in my perspective, it feels like that we're in a little bit overtime now, that the events have been delayed. But if we would be downloading something, say something from the net, and it would be 90% downloaded, you know that sometimes the last 10% seems to take disproportionately longer? That's my feeling about where we're at now. That somehow the last part of this journey is taking longer, but it's still, again, trying to map 5D reality into 3D linear time. It doesn't really work in that way. It's not having that same relationship because we're talking about consciousness. And when we ask when will the shift happen, a better question is how long will it take someone to forgive? How long will it take someone to become compassionate? How long will it take 7 billion people to have a higher frequency? That's a better question. Because when we think of that, then we're talking in terms of critical mass. And so then it's our responsibility to co-create the shift and not be passively, again, in a state of disempowerment, waiting for the shift to occur. And again, in the Truther, the awakening community, you can see at one level of the awakening, the whole conspiracy movement is becoming more mainstream now. And I feel that that tag, you notice that one, I didn't welcome the conspiracy theorists because there's no conspiracy, it's just true, right? We all know that. But that's going to shift into the mainstream. And so when the mainstream gets a hold of this, there was going to be a great turmoil because people who actually really believed in the system and cheered the system on will realise that they've spent their whole life basically being lied to, and all the things they thought they were doing were actually not good for them. And then finally they'll realise that what the truth is, and there'll be a lot of projected anger. And why I put this phrase here is that we need to harmonise the enemy within. And we don't really have an enemy within, but if we want to think of it in that terms, I'm talking about the emotional states of fear, anger, frustration, all those rage, all those sorts of emotions, despondency. Because if we have to have an enemy, because it's just basically we're experiencing ourselves externally, and the elite is a really easy target, or the Illuminati or whoever, but it's actually we're experiencing ourselves through another. And when we have that maturity, we can start to see that it's already all inside me, those emotions. They're just looking for something to be projected onto, to get attached to connect with. And this means that we actually have to look inside. And that's really what the awakening, the ascension process is. We're not going to find it on a spaceship or in a crop circle or something like that. Those things are awesome. But it's a journey within. And that's what we really need to take on board in terms of our own process. That it's okay to have those states. Don't make that wrong, but identify them and take ownership of them, because then that's a state of deeper empowerment. And also, you've probably noticed in the awakening community, people like to argue with each other a little bit, particularly on the internet. Has anybody here ever seen someone win an argument on the internet? Has anyone ever said, oh, you know what, I was really wrong and you were right, I apologise. I hope you have a great weekend and hope it's sunny for you tomorrow on your day off. Never happens. And what we need to realise is that we're never going to agree with anybody about everything. That's just how it is. And so what I would say is look for things that we can agree on rather than things we can disagree on. Because the awakening community is trying to move forward and bring in this new paradigm, and we've all got our different ideas about it. But we need to understand that we're all on the same team. And there was a great saint in India in the 20th century. His name was Ramana Maharishi. He was from South India in Tiruvannamalai, and he was a genuine enlightened master. He actually had a state of samadhi, cosmic consciousness, when he was 16, and he thought he was dying. And he was a very, very humble man. When he actually read someone's newspaper, so that's how long ago it was that, you know, someone actually bought a mainstream newspaper, he actually would fold it up really carefully and make sure all the corners were laid out before giving it back to the person. And someone asked him one time, they said, Guruji, how should we treat the others? And Ramana just replied, there are no others. So navigating the shift is a huge topic, but I would say in the ways that are bringing all the people's issues and subconscious tension to the surface, one of the best practices you can actually do is mindfulness and presence, and understand that you are not your thoughts. And if you're going through a difficult period, understand that it will pass. It's important that we stay as balanced and harmonious as we can, and also understand that this lifetime was to experience something truly epic and truly amazing. And I'm very optimistic that we are going to experience something that cannot really even be put into words at some point in our lifetime. The time frames are always difficult to evaluate, but it's important to understand that we are steady and grounded and present, and understand that you're not your thoughts. And to be the essence, the presence, the watcher, the observer, the witness consciousness behind the thoughts, particularly in times when you are being challenged with what's going on. And this topic alone is such a massive topic, how to navigate the shift. Well, it's one that will become more and more prominent because people's coping mechanisms of, gambling, alcohol, shopping, internet, just numbing out, chilling out, avoiding, escaping, they're not working for people anymore because we're all being now challenged to confront our shadow and to embrace our shadow and work with it. And in many ways, the whole New Age movement is an aspect of it is total psyop. It's total disinfo. It's a total spiritual bypass. And by that, I mean that the New Age movement is extremely guilty of not actually helping people process what Jung called his shadow and integrating this and becoming more enlightened to add light to the shadow. Simple process of checking out or numbing out or escapism, like this idea that we're just going to magically create a 5D light body by holding a crystal and drawing a card from a deck. I mean, it's ridiculous. When you study classical spirituality and you see what enlightened masters did and went through, read the story of Milarepa, the Tibetan's greatest yogi, what he did to achieve enlightenment, and the New Age movement is kind of being deviated in a way off the essence of what will produce real effects, real outcomes and real transformation. So for this reason, we need to encourage a new paradigm way of thinking for evolution where we merge classical spirituality, at least in my opinion, with this futuristic approach of the new paradigm, which is going to become more pronounced as we go deeper into the shift. And which leads me to the next point, because this is an important one, that what is happening with the matrix, many people are trying to talk about escaping the matrix, becoming more self-sufficient, becoming disconnected, off the grid, all these things. That's awesome, and that's a part of the shift, definitely. But we're still living in this matrix, as I would relate to it. And what I've noticed is that with these waves of energy coming in, it has dropped off this year, but it's still faint, but particularly last year, in May, June, July, very powerful, started to be a more dislocation to space and time. Now, that's what I call escaping the matrix, because while we're bound by these laws of perceived reality of time and space and physical locality, then we're actually plugged into the matrix. For me, it's a lot more than just voting in a different government or getting rid of the chemtrails or something like that. So this program that we're experiencing, whether it's a hologram or whether it's a projected reality, more and more people are starting to perceive that. Dislocating from time and space, as I'm experiencing, is the number one thing to truly disconnect from the matrix. Now, I'm experiencing that a little bit as if you would be on a tram or a train and it takes off, like inertia. So there's this inertia that creeps, that moves. And this is the dislocation from the time. And I don't talking about now having a still mind or having a calm mind. I'm talking about completely checking out from 3D linear time. And that means connecting with the eternal now, with the present moment. And this is a clear aspect, as I'm perceiving it, of the paradigm shift. Because when we are disconnected from this reality of this time, we are entering a state of timelessness. And this is through Vishuddha chakra. And this is the chakra of purity. So this is why I'm coming back from what I was saying earlier, that this different levels of awakening, this is basically a lock. And we need to get to a certain level to experience this continuously. So the way I've been experiencing it is very chaotic. In a sense, it will start and then it will just stop. So I'm not at a place yet where I can just generate it. I can only perceive it. And the yin aspect is firstly to perceive it, and the yang aspect is to give it control, to be able to produce it at will. And this, as I'm experiencing it, is happening at the same time as space displacement, but I'm not perceiving that in the same way. I'm only perceiving the displacement of time, and it's momentarily. And it comes and goes, but that's something that you will start to experience. I feel some of you probably already are, stronger and stronger and stronger, particularly as the waves become more powerful. So that's a very important way of truly disconnecting from this matrix, because then we're not bound by the same laws of space and time which keep us plugged into this 3D linear time frame. And that's an important thing to understand. So the best way to practice this is to simply practice what's called mindfulness or presence when we are actually activating it. Because when this dislocation in time occurs, I'm automatically present. It's like the mind just checks out. It's like, it's gone. It's pure consciousness, pure witness. So many people, again, in this new age disinfo, have this attitude that the ascension movement is a place to escape to, that we're going somewhere else to a light body in a different dimension and we're leaving here. I personally don't feel that's actually the truth. I feel that we actually incarnated to create heaven on earth, and I think that is the mission for planetary liberation. So for me, it's a binary process. It's 1 or 0. We either collectively succeed at this or we collectively fail, because we have to understand that many of the programs that the New Age are responsible for is making it a very self-centered, egotistical ascension, that it's all about my light body and my rainbow body and my 5th dimension. Well, it's a team effort, and the more we can help shift the collective, the faster this process will go. It's actually going incredibly fast at certain levels. Like if you look at the awakening community now in terms of the conspiracy movement, we'll just use that phrase, then that is like a tsunami that's occurring now, and it's going faster and faster and faster, and I consider it to be going to go mainstream rapidly in the next 2 to 5 years. It's already started to occur, but the momentum behind this now, for me at least, is unstoppable. That all these social, political, environmental issues are now coming to the surface. We've seen it here clearly when, just recently when another Prime Minister has been knifed. Sorry, I mean leadership spill. That's the newspeak for it, isn't it? So you can see that that's the dysfunction. The dysfunction has to get stronger for the mass consciousness to perceive it for what it really is, so we can then co-create the new paradigm. So in some ways, welcome dysfunction, even welcome dysfunction in yourself, because then you are being urged to move forward, to process this, to find a true solution. So I do also feel that there will be ongoing earth changes. I think that's part of the process, coming back to what I was saying about the shift that Gaia is having. I think if you think about the trauma that this planet has suffered at the hands of humans, whether it's been killing, environmental abuse, all these things over the millennia, that this is like a shedding, it's like a release of this tension, whether it's in terms of volcanoes or various natural disasters. But I also don't think they will be cataclysmic. And remember, you'll always be in the right place at the right time. So to conclude with, I'd like to just bring your attention to Antarctica. Now, there will be a lot of information coming about Antarctica the next decade. It's already started. Now, there are so many legends about Shambhala, the oasis, the city of light, Shangri-La, Agartha, the inner earth, all these things. Well, there's a lot of activity in Antarctica, politicians going down there to visit, all kinds of research going on down there, and it's all very secret. Now, you should know at the University of Edinburgh, they've recently discovered that there are an extra approximately 90 volcanoes in West Antarctica. They used to think there were approximately 40, and now they've just discovered another approximate 90, which means that Antarctica is actually the biggest hub of volcanic activity on this planet. But it's the ice has been suppressing it. And there's all kinds of theories that as the ice melts, the volcanoes will become more active, creating potentially a pole shift. Now, a pole shift doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a huge problem. Think of dragging a carpet across the floor if the crust is just shifting. It doesn't necessarily have to be cataclysmic, but there will be a lot of information, a lot of disinfo, a lot of misinformation coming out of Antarctica as things start to unfold. So keep an eye on that, because you're definitely going to be misled, but there'll definitely be truth in what's occurring there as well. And I'm as excited as anybody else to see what comes, because if someone like a Rear Admiral Byrd, B-Y-R-D, of the US Navy, went down there and researched it, and if you've not heard of his name before, research it, because his investigations and what he discovered was completely stunning. So keep an eye on Antarctica. We don't know what's going on, but I have a feeling that there'll be more to follow with that. So in terms of the shift, what will your legacy be? And many people think that when they get asked this question, they need to have a massive contribution, that it's external. And I would say that's not the way, the destiny for most of us. I would say if our legacy can be that we were like a loving person, a kind person, a generous person, a non-judgmental person, then that's going to be a huge legacy for us that we're talking about with the shift. It's an internal, it's an energetical legacy. So keep that in mind, that, you know, what will your legacy be? It's a good one, because we need people to step up and do things now to create this transformation on this planet, and not simply wait for it to happen. It needs to be more activated in this way, more kind of taking action to make the shift happen. So obviously our heart is tied with the heart of the earth, and if we can discover this greater self-love, greater self-acceptance, greater compassion for others, then we'll be able to create this planetary transformation. But it's important to understand that we're co-creators, because most of the programs that we have experienced through this current paradigm depower us, they disempower us. And what we need to understand is that we are truly co-creating this reality. We just need to take responsibility for what we are co-creating. So it's important to hold the light in this time, and also be there for other people, because other people won't understand what's happening as we go deeper into this shift. It'll be very confronting for people, it'll be very confusing. People are already starting to ask questions that they just don't have the answers to, and you guys will be the ones who actually they're coming to. So it's important to hold the light for your own awakening, but also for other people. And in conclusion, I'd like to paraphrase by saying, ask not what the shift can do for you, but what you can do for the shift. Thank you.